off your engine! Here we go, a Suburban towing a Mercedes SUV. What a scream. Well, I can't resist this one. I was walking around the block today, and what do I spy? A young woman going to college, and she's towing her Mercedes SUV with a Chevy Suburban. I guess she didn't trust the Mercedes to go that far, even though it was only a year and a half old. I asked her, I said, "You're towing a Mercedes with a Suburban, huh?" She says, "I don't want to put mileage on the Mercedes." Honey, they got no resale value. It doesn't matter how low the mileage is on them. Nobody pays much for those things used. I was thinking more or less that she's probably afraid it wasn't going to make it wherever she was going. Seems she was going to California to go to college. This is Houston's long drive. Guess she didn't trust the Mercedes to make it that far. Or she was under the illusion that if you keep the mileage low, you can sell it for more money. They have no resale value. Check out Mercedes-Benz's. Got on the street, had $120,000 S-Class. When they sold it, they got $3,500 for it. Mind you, it was 10 years old, but still. They don't go for much. Doesn't matter what the mileage is on those things. But I just could not resist. When I walked by that and I saw there's an almost new Mercedes SUV being pulled by a Suburban. Now that says something, doesn't it? Jose Fernandez. Going to look at a 2010 Honda Civic with 132,000 miles. They're asking $6,500. After I get it checked out, assuming it's good, is this a good price? Yeah, for the seller, not for you. That's way, way overpriced. That's an 11-year-old car with 132,000 miles. Give you an example. I recently sold my mother's Toyota Corolla, which was 11 years old, and it only had 70,000 miles. And all I could get for it was $3,500. Not as back in Niagara Falls, not here in Texas, but still. That's way overpriced. Forget that money. Those people are out of their minds. That's the problem with used cars. People see these book values and they think, oh, I can sell it. It's baloney. One, it's an inflated price. And two, it's the price that a used car dealer gets who's financing the car. You're paying cash, I'm assuming. But if you're financing it, go somewhere else. Finance cars, you're going to pay 2 to 3 times what the car's worth. That's just how it goes. Lover, Portuguese water dog says. They seem to be rather popular dogs these days. Scotty, I'll tell you, I started looking at Subarus because you said they have good all-wheel drive systems. If I go that way instead of the Element, what is a good model? Okay, what you want is one that's made in Japan. You want to get one that's made in Japan. If you can drive a standard transmission, get the standard transmission. If you can't, make sure you get one that's made in Japan and get a 4-cylinder. Do not get the 6. The Boxer 6s have engine problems, head gasket problems. Got a customer with one. Thing's got 60,000 light miles on it. The engine's already clacking and making noises. Get the 4-cylinder on those. Do not get the 6. Joe Bloom says, Scotty, what are your thoughts on an '07 Chrysler Town & Country? 192,000 miles, 3.8 V6, my first car, $1,500. Chrysler vans can be angless money pits. You'd want a mechanic to check that out before you even go any further. Now, if the mechanic says that it's okay, it's almost got 200,000 miles, offer them $1,000 and see what they'll take. It's not a great vehicle, but that isn't much money for buying a vehicle. And if it still runs and goes okay, what the heck? You're never going to find a good van like a Toyota at that price. It's not going to last forever, realize that. But if it's going to be your first vehicle and it runs okay and the mechanic says it's okay, could be okay for a short period of time. Elliot Palumbo says, what Chrysler does best is their big Canadian 5.7-liter Hemi engines do a lot better with muscle cars than normal cars with smaller engines. Ah, yes, in terms of speed they did, and I used to think they were very good engines until they have modified the engines, and what they did was they put the cams up higher. They're still push-rod engines, but the cam is now higher up away from the crankshaft. Used to be the crankshaft flung oil on it, would lubricate the cams. Now, at low speeds, low RPMs, they don't, and the cams run dry, and they wear out the lifters in the cams, and you got to rebuild the engines for $5,000 plus. So I'm not a fan of the later model ones because they did not build them right. You'll see a lot of them that click, that make noises, that burn oil. They didn't used to. They were better made, but when they upgraded them for more power, their engineers screwed up and didn't think, oh, maybe the oil's not splashing up high enough. You'd think the engineers would know what they're doing, right? That they would think, gee, I wonder what the ramifications are of this. Well, the idiots didn't. Either that or they didn't care. One or the other. Of course, consider that Fiat owns them now. I don't know. Maybe they don't know what they're doing. Jose Cortez says, Scotty, I'm looking at an '08 Grand Marquis for $2,500 with 110,000 miles. Heard the V8 engines can last 200,000 or 300,000 miles. That is true. You always try to offer as little as possible, but that's not all that bad of a price. I'd offer them 2, and then I'd take whatever they would take on. Like, those things can last a really long time. And they're not that bad on the highway. You can get like 24 miles a gallon on the highway. Sergio Ken says, I bought a 94 Isuzu Rodeo. Went to change spark plug and found oil in the spark plug cylinder was full of oil. Is the head gasket, or what do you think? Okay, if you're talking about there's a spark plug, you put the spark plug wrench on it, it gets covered in oil. It's all on the top of the engine there. All you need is a new valve cover gasket assembly to keep it from leaking oil in there. If you're talking about not the outside, but the inside of the engine was covered with oil, you got bad piston rings, bad valve seals, you got serious engine problems. Pray it's just the valve cover gasket seal. A lot of times it is. Brian Bell says, do Jeep Cherokees last, the newer ones? No. The older ones did. You go back 20, 30 years ago, hey, those things had the straight 6-cylinder engines. They had enough power, and they would last 300,000-400,000 miles if you took care of them. The trannies would always go out before the engines did. But the new ones, since Fiat took over, you can say bye-bye to quality and Jeep. They're just selling a name. Now they go, what? Jeep Renegade. You know what a Renegade is? It's a Fiat 500 4-wheel drive. Got nothing to do with Jeep, but they call it a Jeep Renegade. And the rest of the quality's gone down the toilet, too. Dave Blends it says, my car does a squealing noise when the AC is on in a Honda Civic. Okay, you want to pray you just got a bad air conditioning fan belt. If it's worn out, it will squeal. And if you got one of those serpentine belts, a lot of times they won't even crack, but the grooves get too deep, and then they don't ride on the pulleys right, and they squeal. Try a new belt and pray it's that, because if it still does it with a new belt, it means the air conditioning compressor's starting to go out, and it's straining so much it's making the belt squeal. Normally it's just a worn belt, though. Mark Vega said, Scotty, greetings from La La Land, Los Angeles. What do you think of an '05 Scion XB? 229,000 miles for $1,200, only had one owner. If it still runs and it really only had one owner, what the heck? You're in La La Land. Everything in La La Land costs a fortune, and $1,000 is nothing in La La Land. But before you throw any money down, have a mechanic like me check it out first. Could be a scam, could be something serious is wrong with it, but if he says it's okay, go ahead and buy it. Makoto Shimakuro says, Scotty, long-time follower, I got a 2001 manual transmission Honda Civic. Car complaint says it's the worst year, but it lasts me for 11 years. What do you think about car complaints? Well, in that case, I think they're idiots. I've had many customers with those things, and they love them. They drove them around. They lasted a long time. You know, the problem with these complaint things is they just take complaints and then they go. People can complain about the dumbest things. You know, you want a car that lasts forever. What if everybody complains? Well, the paint wasn't that good. Well, you got a car that lasts forever. Who cares about the paint? Or the brakes squealed. Well, who cares if the brakes squeal if they work, you know? A lot of those complaint things. People complain about anything nowadays. They just love to complain. People here sometimes complain to me, Scotty, you didn't answer my question. Well, I got over 1 billion views on YouTube. You think I can answer every question? It's physically impossible. So don't complain. Be happy with what you got. And that's a good car. So I'd say in that case, the car complaints are a bunch of idiots that don't know what they're talking about. Monkenknockers. What do you think about a Ford Explorer 02 as a first car? Would it be reliable? You know, if it was taken care of, it could be. Those things did have quite a bit of problems with their transmissions. Sometimes the timing chains on the engines went out. But if a mechanic says it's okay, you can get them dirt cheap. They don't go for much. I have had quite a few customers in the last 20 years buy used Explorers for anything from $500 to $4,000 and still be able to drive them for a few years. So what the heck? Why not? But you want it checked out. Just don't buy it sight unseen. Rico West says, Scotty, I want to lease a V6 SUV. Is a Murano a good choice? Well, in this case, I'd say, sure, why not? They fall apart when they age, but you're leasing it. If it breaks, you give it back to them. But the only time I tell somebody to get a Murano, just like, you want a Jaguar? Go right ahead. Lease one. And when the lease is up, give it back to them. You know how much money you're going to spend if you're happy with spending that kind of money? Go ahead. They don't ride all that bad. Now, with a V6, they got plenty of power. Just don't buy it when the lease is up, or you'll regret it. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.